Welcome back to the Unveiled podcast. I'm your host, Megan Murphy, and today I get to sit down with Melinda Leslie. Not only a researcher and experiencer, she's also the woman who's taken thousands of people out under the Sedona skies to actually see UFOs for themselves. For over 30 years, she's investigated covert government involvement in UFO abductions, explored the reality of psychokinesis, and guided thousands into direct sightings. I'm so excited to dive into her insights and wild experiences. Melinda, thank you so much for joining us today.
Sure, happy to do it. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. First, we're going to explore psychokinesis, the mind's ability to move matter, and then we will step into the UFO and abduction realm that Melinda has been living for decades. So about 2 hours ago, we were experimenting with psychokinesis.
Yes, psychokinesis. That's
Yes.
right. Psycho meaning like psycho, like psychotic, but psychic, psi, psi, and kinetic like movement. So it means affecting or moving matter with your mind.
Wow.
Telekinesis is really the moving of matter with your mind. So psychokinesis is more like affecting or changing matter with your mind.
Okay. And I actually got to experience this myself with you and my 13-year-old niece and my older sister. And I was pretty shocked. I mean, I've heard people say, yeah, this stuff doesn't work, this isn't real. But now I've been there, I've done it, and I know it's
Well, I'm not, you guys were all worried, we're going to bend their net like crazy. You guys, they all did.
Yeah, it was wild how easy it was. So,
Yeah, well, when I teach that class, it is 2 hours long. The first hour is all talking. I cover the history, like how I learned and how it was developed in the lab and such. So history, then the science of it, the theory, kind of why it works, and application, how to apply it to your lives. And then the second hour is technique and do it. Not everyone who teaches it covers that other stuff, but I want people to get an education with it. And, and the bending of the silver, I always tell people, we bend the metal because it's cheap, easy metal. We bend silverware because it's cheap, easy metal. And, and meaning it's, and you buy it for 25 cents a piece at a thrift store and that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So, but really it's learning how your brain puts out a frequency all the time. You probably have questions regarding this, but you can ask them still. But your brain puts out a frequency all the time. Science has now proven that your brain transmits a frequency, like broadcasting like a radio all the time.
Right.
Neuroscience has proven that, physics has proven that. Okay. And you can learn to control that frequency and use it to your advantage. I always tell people it's like you're going through life with your hand tied behind your back. So it's untying that hand and realizing you already have, your brain puts out a frequency that affects all matter all the time anyways. You might as well learn to control and use it. And then you can use it for manifesting your goals and dreams, healing yourself and others, healing for yourself, healing for others, manifesting your goals and dreams, creating the life of your dreams, what you want.
Bending reality.
And bending reality, yeah. And then the, real simple application is hand-eye coordination, like sports and whatnot. And, I talked about shooting and how the government trains sharpshooters in the military who are already, like guys who would take out, not supposed to be, 4 nationals at 200 yards or whatever. Shame on us, but they took them and took these guys who were like special forces guys, already scoring like the 80 percentile range, and taught them this and took them up to just shy of 100%, like in the high 90 percentile range in their shooting. So these were guys who they did all their stuff they would normally do to shoot, set a little wind meter, whatever. Yeah. Okay, but they just had them add this, and their accuracy went up, and they actually called it, no joke everybody, they called it the Jedi program. So this was in the early 80s, and it was like mid-70s when Star Wars came out, about 76 or 75, anyways. So they called it the Jedi program. Wow. After Star Wars. And they were taking, like I said, special forces guys and having them learn this.
And I thought that was really interesting how you taught us that, how you brought that in, because you kind of prepped us for the whole entire, you were prepping our brain, and I noticed that right off the bat.
Well, I told you, I told her in the class, I said, it's like, give me hands, but you got it now. Yeah. She said, I get it, you're already shifting our belief system. Like even when I passed around that stuff in the beginning for you guys to handle and all these different shapes, it was, so again, that shifts people's belief system because they go, well, you did these, other people did these, so their belief system goes up. And so by the time we get around in the second hour to bending, everyone goes from doubting themselves to expecting to bend.
It was incredible.
Yeah.
I can't even
There's
believe
a
it.
method to my madness.
Yes, there is, and I experienced it today. So, if everything is energy, why do you think it's so difficult for people to believe that this is possible?
Well, cultural beliefs, religious beliefs, other things.
Yeah.
You know, the education system, everyone's taught to think they're limited, and it's, you know, I can't, you know, whether I blame science or the educational system or the religious, you know, fundamentalists or, you know, whatever. You can go, wait a second. People are brought up to think they're limited, that they don't have control, they don't have power, they don't know, because it was relatively recent, you know, probably last 50 years, that science really proved that your brain puts out a frequency that affects all matter.
Yeah.
So people, you know, they fear what they don't understand,
True.
and then they think they're limited and powerless, and none of that's true. You're an unlimited, powerful being.
You mentioned the Matrix, or the movie The Matrix. You
Yeah.
said it's not like that, but it could be like.
Well, the Matrix goes along. This is very complicated. The whole other show.
Yeah, I know,
something
right?
called simulation theory, but it's the idea, you know, where Neo in the end, you know, gets on the phone, and if you've seen the movie at the end where he jumps into space, you know, goes out, you know, and flies out. But that's, you realize, wait, it's the Matrix, and that's the mind, and so he's like, I'm going to free everybody's mind, you know, and everyone's going to realize that, you know, what we call reality, the third dimension, is really like the Matrix. It's like limiting, and that movie was all about, hey, that's not real. The real world is an unlimited one. The real world is your mind, you know. And in that world, so they were, you know, hooked up to a thing in the back of their head that, you know, was allowing them to access it. But they learned if they could think it, they could do it, because it wasn't the physical reality. The actual physical reality was something else. But it's incredible. I mean, anyone with a metaphysical understanding seeing that movie goes, oh my God, like,
I
this
have
is
my
it.
degree in metaphysics. Yeah.
So there you go. So it's like going, wow, this is true, you know. And the Coen brothers, or whoever, actually no, like the Coens or the Wachowskis.
I can't recall.
Maybe the Wachowskis. I think it's the Wachowskis. But anyways.
Yeah, you're a movie buff.
Yeah.
Earlier, like, it was like, what?
But I'm just saying that, anyways, I apologize to anyone out there who's like yelling at the computer right now, correcting me. But I think it's the Wachowskis. But they had that understanding. They obviously did, and wrote it into the story. So, I mean, it works for, like, you know, repression from the government. You know, there's many layers to it. And then the second and third movie. But it just gets into the unlimitedness of the mind, especially the first one, you know, really does. And that's the whole idea. It's a matrix, it's limiting, you're really unlimited. And that's, he says, I'm here to free everybody.
And you're kind of doing that. You're like the Neo of our modern time, right?
Well, that's a huge compliment, but I'll take it. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. No, that's pretty awesome. That's pretty awesome. I mean,
You
that's
freed
awesome.
our minds today. I mean, I witnessed you doing it with my 13-year-old
Well,
niece.
hell, you guys were all, certainly you, but even your sister and niece, they were understanding of metaphysical concepts and stuff, you know.
Probably because I'm browbeating
Yeah.
for like the last 10
You sound like
years.
me. You sound like me. Hit people over the head. You will, you know, you will have a UFO sign. You will.
You will bend that
I know,
spoon.
you will bend that spoon. But I know how people limit themselves.
Yeah,
you know,
it kills me.
Your niece comes to mind, you know, and yet she did phenomenal, you know.
Yeah, what happened when I left the room?
And your sister, who before we started said, well, I tried to start one earlier, it didn't work, and I can't really do it.
Yeah.
We were having to dial her back because she was bending aggressively and not following, like, jumping ahead of directions. That's okay. So you need to learn some control. But she jumped ahead and already like bent. Here she went from the person who was skeptical to the first person to bend before I was even done to the top.
That was really cool.
Yeah.
What did Maddie end up doing when I left to get ready for the pod? Sarah said that she bended it a different way you hadn't seen before?
Yeah, I think that happened. Oh. I had these little hors d'oeuvre forks. If she's around, she could hand it to us. That were these, I think they were like, not shrimp salad, but might think of like a little shrimp dish, you know, like little forks like that. They had thick little prongs, the prongs on them, and they were really short. So I knew you weren't going to be able to get in there and bend those. And by the way, you guys, the first thing we do is a form of bending where the stuff gets really soft and pliable, the metal is so where, and then you do manipulate it with your hands. So you get these kind of shapes.
Oh yeah, show them.
Yeah, manipulating with your hands, and so they can see that. And so
these are ones you've bended.
Yeah, I bent these. Now why don't you hold up and show them some of the ones you bent?
Yeah.
And here's another one. That was
well, yours
that has a big loop, so that should be easy to see on camera. The big loop.
Yeah, you can.
But
tell
these were previously bent by me. My students, when they bend, take everything with them. So like these guys will all keep whatever they bent, and they all bent about 5 pieces each. But there you go. So she bent that during the class. Now, it bends easily. Now, did she use her hands on those? Yes, but they get real soft and you're just kind of maneuvering them into shape.
Because, if you try to do it.
Right, they got hot.
Yeah.
They get hot. And I always say galvanic skin response, like you run your finger along where it's bending, and if it goes, like kind of sticks, and you start to bend it, that tells me it'll bend more. Like it's hot enough that it'll bend more.
Have you witnessed psychokinesis any other way besides spoon bending?
Mm-hmm.
I know you were telling me about telekinesis. Can you kind of describe?
Well, yeah, telekinesis like this. If I took, this cup, it's bottom of my latte here, and made that float through the air. So telekinesis is moving matter that you haven't touched.
Yeah.
Moving and manipulating stuff.
But psychokinesis
is just affecting matter with your mind. As opposed to freely, like telekinesis, moving independently of you. Teleport, moving through space. Teleport, moving, and kinesis is kinetic. That's the movement.
The movie you said, the fire starter.
A fire starter, yeah. Well, it's a Stephen King book,
That's
made into a movie. And she's starting fire. She gets angry, and the fire starts. That's definitely telekinesis.
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to make them
understand.
understand.
Yeah, so she's projecting energy with her mind, which we are too, but that's separate from you. So if it's separate from you, and something happens, like something lifts or moves or happens that way, that's like teleporting. You're moving it through space, kinetic movement, and so tele is to move it, energetically.
Without touching it all.
Without touching, yeah. Okay. And psychokinesis is just affecting matter with your mind.
But you're still having your hands on
in the class. Now, fortunately, you cut out right before the end, so you get the hands off. But I'll show you some pieces. So in the beginning of the class, I covered the history, science, theory, application, and then we have usually a little break, and then we come back and do the technique, how to do it, and then everybody's bending, and then I talk everybody through the process each time, so you're reminded of the steps, Yeah. And but the very end of the class, after we've bent 3 to 4 pieces with using our hands, so it gets soft, you manipulate it. That's these pieces we just showed you. That's how these were done, right? That's one by me and one by her, So that's cool. It. It's cool. It's like a serving fork, And at the end of the class, we do hands off. So you're doing the same process, which is the 3 steps that I told you guys: connect, command, release. So I always tell people in my class, if you can remember that, connect, command, release, then you'll always remember how to do it, because you connect with it in an energy sense, which is a visualization process I do in the class. It's very, easy kind of guided visualization to connect. And you connect with it, and then you give a command for it to bend, and then release just is like let go, let God. It means relaxing, letting go, and you release. And then you go to bed. So those ones you go and you start manipulating with your hands, but it's hot and soft. Okay. At the end of the class, we do the same process: connect, command, release, and then kind of a big exhale and relax. And then you scoot your hand down like this, and you hold it down here, and you let it do its thing. Now, this one was one another friend of mine and I who have taught this together as a big class. We had like 65 people here in town. And at the end of the class, we did the hands off, and everybody's holding two pieces so they're at the same time. And what you do is after you do the process and scoot your hand down, I say move them out of your view. Because if you're staring at them, you might be doing a beautiful job at manifesting a straight piece of silverware. Because you're looking at it straight, so your mind's still praying it straight. By letting the energy go to work and moving it out of your view, you're not blocking it from changing, okay? And so
getting out your own way.
So I help teach people at the end of the class, and I'm going around the room, and some people are blocked, and I'm helping them and leading them through it again, and so is she. And I'm holding the spoon out like this. I should make sure I don't hold it off camera, but I'm holding it like this, and I'm going around peppering it. And finally, it was like 5 minutes after we did it, and someone says, oh, when did yours bend? And I go, mine didn't bend. And they go, you might want to look. I look back, and that had happened. So if they can see that on there, So that had happened just holding it here, that whole bend. Now it's not real dramatic. I didn't bring one from the car, but I'll use this spoon here, which you did do with your hand.
Yeah.
But if I ever had people had a piece, not just bend like that, but fold over like that, yeah.
You have?
Yeah. But they've all taken it with them. Yeah. Oh yeah.
Just like mine.
Yeah, and sometimes they go out at like a 90-degree angle. So like, this is like, what's that, 20 or 30 degrees, but if it had gone straight out, at 90 degrees, so that's like 30 degrees. But this one flopping over, so I have had them do that, yeah. So this is a little bit more. This was done hands off. And the prongs here, before this was done, were checked to be in alignment and straight. And now you can see they're off up and down that way. So they're a little bit off, up and down, and then side to side, like this one, if people zoomed in, they would see that that's over. And so and there's a rippling in the handle here. So not only is there this dramatic bending right there, that dramatic bending, but then there's a ripple, and then these have separated. So all that happened. It was actually a class, and I had bent this one. I always bend when my clients are, my students, and it had bent a little, and it still felt warm, and I said, I'm going to do the process again. I think it'll bend more. And I did the process again, and then it bent more. So I did the process twice. Now, after a while, like, oh, can you straighten it out the next day? Or I have little kids play with them later, and I hear back from them that they broke them. What happens is the metal gets brittle. When it's done properly, it then gets brittle. So if later you try to force it or do something later, it just snaps and breaks. But I tell people, if it breaks later, it means you did it right the first time.
That's amazing.
So I won't try to rebend this, but that day, right away, while the energy was still in process, 10 minutes later, I tried it again, and it bent a little more. So that's that one. But that's holding it just like I'm holding it now.
Wow.
And I have some dramatic pictures, man. Like little, for some reason, it's little kids. I said this in class.
Yeah. Between
like the ages of 8 and 13, that often because I think they're old enough that they get it and they follow directions. Some littler kids too, but for some reason, it's like these kids, give or take 10 years old men, they'll do all sorts of really dramatic bending, with the hands-off stuff. Like some of my most dramatic pictures of it are from those kids.
Yeah, you mentioned because of their teenage hormones, because that kind of plays into it. One
thing that the gentleman I learned this from, 𝐸𝐿, which was a research scientist with McDonnell Douglas aircraft, and who investigated all this and did it with the government and developing a project back during the days of what was the remote viewing that the government was developing. Right. They were also doing this. Long story. So it's very complicated. This would go on and on to go into detail. But he learned that the people who did the most bending, what science has proven, neuroscience and physics and whatnot, is your brain puts out the frequency all the time. Your brain is putting out a wave all the time, like a radio. That frequency increases, and everyone thinks, oh, concentration, meditation. No, do those help? Yeah. But you really want to increase it? Jack learned peak emotional experience. You put out the strongest frequency from your brain when you're in a peak emotional experience. As I said in class, poltergeist, right? Everyone's familiar with the term poltergeist, movie about it. People think, oh, it's haunted. Well, it's a ghost moving stuff around, or spirit. Okay. It's a German word, polter. For simplicity, I'll say polter, like angry. I've actually had some Germans, I told you in my class, recently correct me and say, well, means more like active or energetic, And Geist, meaning the word, why we have ghosts, why that word exists, it's taken from Geist. The original word is Geist. Okay, which is German for ghost, but it actually means spirit. So we say poltergeist, like angry ghost, poltergeist. Okay, but truth is, it's more like active spirit. Okay. Well, what they learned is those environments where poltergeist activity happens, there's usually a kid going through, teenager going through puberty, or a woman going through menopause, or a couple fighting all the time, like where the emotions are off the charts and going up and down a lot, freaking out, not, A lot of those, I didn't say this in class, but like those ghost hunting shows you see on TV and stuff.
Yeah, I used to do that.
Okay, well then you may know this. A lot of times the reason they're what's called provoking spirit or acting up. Now a lot of people say don't do that.
I do not want to do that ever.
But they know if they do that,
peak
emotional experience, they'll get more psi. See, the psi, well, it both feeds off the energy, and it's the people making psychokinesis happen.
Yeah.
And telekinesis happen. So what they learn, when there's hauntings, where there's poltergeist activity, stuff moving around, it's usually a person in an extreme emotional state that either the energy, ghost spirit, is feeding off of, or the person themselves is unknowingly actually producing psychokinesis. Because a lot of times you take that person in that extreme emotional state out of the environment and stuff doesn't happen. So it's, again, could spirit be feeding off of it? Yes, but it could also be the person producing psychokinesis, telekinesis unknowingly.
Very cool.
And so they learned. So what he learned in the class, and I have everyone I said, when I originally sent you a text, rowdy, I have everyone get rowdy and yell in the class because it raises the energy. Jack used to teach these large classes, like 100 people, and we have little kids. And the kids would do cartwheels and run around screaming, do what little kids do. And everyone go, oh, they're interrupting, they're distracting. And he said, oh no, they're bringing the energy up.
Oh.
Their excitement, peak emotion. When everyone would do that, And so I tried to in my class, yell. If you laugh and get hysterical, like you sound like a nut, you're going to be the best bender in there.
Yeah.
And it's, again, peak emotional experience. So you produce more psi because your brain puts out a stronger frequency when you're in an emotional state. So I said this in class, one of the ways to apply this is manifesting your goals and dreams in life.
Yes,
you want
to
to manifest better. People say, oh, you meditate, concentrate. No. First off, you want to think those thoughts all the time. So we talked about dream boards.
Yes.
Dream boards, wish boards. Create that, but you don't put it away. You put it in a hallway or where you back out your car in the garage. You're seeing it all. You're subconscious, so you're thinking it all the time.
Yeah.
Okay. Then you make those happy emotional things in the images that you put on that, but it should make you laugh every time you see it or chuckle, because that's, again, peak emotional experience. So I tell people, you want to manifest something, you can meditate and visualize, but what you really want to do to really create is get emotional, get excited, talk about it,
Embody it. Normalizing the nervous system to it, right?
Well, it's just that peak, you're gonna, again, law of attraction is matching the frequency. You're going to put out a stronger frequency from your brain if it's an emotional one. They've proven that. So the emotional frequencies are stronger. Get emotional, get excited, sing, dance about it. That's the stuff you're going to manifest.
And that's why worrying and freaking out about things is a double-edged sword.
Yeah, because you're manifesting
going to manifest it even more.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Or being fearful, anger.
Fear, yeah.
Angry.
Big one for me, fear.
Well, like again, the movie Firestarter, but obviously Stephen King, who wrote the book, obviously done his research. And the little girl, the Firestarter, when she would get angry, don't make me angry.
Yeah.
Sounds like the Hulk, but you know what I mean. Don't make me angry, but it's because that's when it would act up,
Right.
And that was a peak emotional experience. So can anger produce psi? Oh, yeah. Can hate produce psi? Oh, yeah.
Can sadness?
Sadness can produce psi if it's really extreme. Yeah. But
Even
why
though it's
not?
such a low
You're going to have more
frequency?
control over it, and you're getting, because again, the energy is matching.
Okay.
So you're going to get a better response and more positive things in your life if that peak emotional state is happiness, joy, excitement. Otherwise, what do you get? What do you manifest in your life? Angry, sadness, hate. And when you put that out, man, it comes back to you.
Oh, I know.
Times 10, man.
This is my final question
Sure.
about the psychokinesis. What is the connection, if any, between psychokinesis and the UFO phenomenon?
That's a good question.
Yeah, because I mean, you're
Well,
both.
there's a twofold answer. There's two answers to that.
Yeah.
The first one is none, and the other one is everything. I'm a smart ass, in case you didn't know. Okay, so it has been proven in sightings or contact events that there's a consciousness interaction. When I say proven, I just mean statistically over and over again. You know.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, proof is very subjective, and the truth is, you know, that's why in court, it's no decisions in court are based on proof. They're based on a preponderance of the evidence.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
If you say proof, they'll actually say no. Lawyers will cut you down. There's no proof because proof is subjective. There's no such thing as proof. It's a preponderance of the evidence. How much evidence adds up? In science, it's about statistics. I talked about that in the class. Is it duplicatable over and over again statistically? Yeah. Then you start to go, okay, that's the result. At some point, they say that's the result that produces that
That's the
every time, or
evidence.
nearly every time, you know. And so, yeah, the evidence. You got it.
Mm-hmm.
You're hired.
You told my sister that earlier.
Yeah.
I was like, no, you can't take her from me. I'm gonna need her.
Yeah. So that was very good. Okay, going back to the question though. So, connection to the UFO is there's a consciousness interaction. What you say and think matters in everything you do. It matters in sightings, but it matters for that matter in everything you do in life.
Yeah.
What you say and think, because you're getting what you ask for, literally. You know. So people in UFO sightings often have a strong consciousness interaction, and they'll think, move, or change, or make a turn if they're already seeing something, and then it responds.
Mm-hmm.
So that's happened over and over again. So there's a strong consciousness interaction. Certainly in contact experiences, whatever kind of conscious contact abduction or anything, whatever you want to call that, or going out and requesting ships to show up, what's known
I
as
did that last time.
CE5, close encounters of the fifth kind, which just means human initiated contact.
Yeah.
But all those things are, you're going out with the intent, the consciousness to have an experience, you're asking for it to happen, you're maybe sending out love and gratitude, you know, and that affects and changes the experience. It's just been proven over and over again. Again, I'm saying proof, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
It's evidence over and over again that actually is true. And so that's the connection to this. So a literal connection, not so much, but what you say and think affects your ability to do this, peak emotional experience, that's going to affect that, you know, and change and alter it, or even cause a contact or sighting to happen. That's, you know, that's the whole point when, again, people do the CE5 work, they're putting all those things to use to bring that in. And some teachers will even give some techniques similar to what I tell you guys in here for doing that. You know, visualize it coming in and think positively, say it out loud, play tones, that's, you know, the tones draw them, you know, so all those kind of techniques. And the truth is, there's no right or wrong, it's called whatever works, you know, and different people use different techniques.
Right.
But, you know, it's called whatever gives you the success. Now, my tours, we just see them all the time. So
I know, I was like, we didn't have to do any of that.
Yeah, they're just here all
the
the time. People are like, are we going to do C5 or anything? And I go, no, we don't have to. We just have to look up.
Yeah, I
And
mean,
I use military night vision goggles, which increase light by 50,000 times.
it was incredible.
Yeah,
I
so
took my
that's the
70-year-old
beauty.
mother out
Yeah.
there with you last year, and it was like one of the most coolest experiences I've ever had in my life.
Thank you.
And we didn't have to do
I-
anything.
I love when I hear that from clients. I never get tired of it. And all I do is take people out, talk for an hour about what we're going to see, not going to see. You know, even lately that talk's extended to almost an hour and a half. But what you're going to see, not going to see, how to know if it's planes, helicopters, drones, satellites. I cover all that, so you know how to roll all those things out. You know how to roll those things out, you know. And we see real unknowns. Things stop, turn, change direction, flying formations,
Powering up.
getting real bright.
Yeah.
Well, we call it a power because a lot of times they'll get really big and bright right before they're going to leave. And leave means either they wink out and disappear, or they dim out, and you're left. People are like, "Well, where do they go?" And I said, "Well, they're disappearing to us, so they're either going interdimensional, or they're leaving the atmosphere so fast we're not seeing them go." But we see that a lot. You know,
There's a fly that's driving me crazy in here.
that's all right.
Sorry.
It's called the desert. We have lots of critters.
Well, tell me, why were you chosen to do this line of work?
I don't feel. I mean, I hear you, but I don't feel chosen.
You don't?
No. contact and abductions with extraterrestrials, or non-human intelligence, as we're calling it nowadays.
Yeah.
Okay. But that tends to start in childhood.
Oh.
So, and abductions run in families very commonly. They're following a genetic lineage. And so it's very common that starts.
Why is it? Why do they run? Why is it a genetic lineage? Like, what's the specific?
Well, I'll clue the audience in. We agreed that we would do another show about the hybrid program, but that's what they're doing. They're creating these hybrid beings that are part ET, part
we'll be quiet on that.
Yeah, that's what we'll do. That's going to be a whole bunch. So we agreed to do that show.
Yeah.
But the hybridization, and they're following a genetic lineage, so it runs in families. It's very common for an abductee to some point in their life learn to happen to their parents or grandparents. You're an abductee, you have kids, it happens to them, you have grandkids, it happens to them.
Wow.
So, I remember it was kind of rare to hear of it going like 3 generations of family. Now I know many families where it's, because I've been in the research field for 36 years, so now I know, many families have like 5 generations.
Yeah. How young were you when you first experienced something?
Well, I didn't know, so the beginning of my whole discovery process started in 1989.
Oh.
So that was the beginning of the discovery, but truth is I'd had experiences my whole life.
Wow.
So there were significant periods of what's called missing time.
Oh, what's that?
Well, for instance, a real common one is you're driving somewhere, maybe on a road trip or something, and maybe it's something you've driven many times, that takes, for instance, you go from here to there. Excuse me. From here to there, it should take 3 hours.
I had this happen to me.
And suddenly it takes 4 or 5 hours, and even though you've driven it many times, you're like, I didn't stop. There's no reason why it should take an hour or 2 longer than it normally does. And
mine went quicker. So I was walking.
Oh, you can also, that's called game time experiences. That can happen too. Where a well-known abductee and at the time his fiance lived in San Diego, Southern California. They had to drive to Anaheim near Disneyland. She's a beautiful model. She had a modeling gig. And they were going to go do a shoot, and it was going to be at one of the big hotels in Anaheim, California, right near Disneyland. So they knew from San Diego to there would have taken at least 2 hours, 2.5, and maybe 3. They start off on their trip, and they're driving, and suddenly they're at Chavez Ravine, just past LA, which is where Dodger Stadium is. Have you ever been out in there?
I used to live in LA.
Okay, so you know, Chavez Ravine, Dodger Stadium. Yeah. And it was bumper to bumper traffic. From San Diego to Chavez Ravine, 0 traffic, 0 would take you at least 3 hours. Wow. And any traffic, that's instantly gonna be like 6 hours.
Right.
So they had what you just said, game time. They were on the road. They remember they were on the 5 freeway, passing the 55, okay, in Santa Ana. Okay. And they knew from there, it was many years ago, so it's before we had the cell phones to tell us how much longer and stuff. So, but they knew, they'd driven it before, and they said, okay, we're in Santa Ana on the 5, we're like 15, maybe 20 minutes away. And so they remember seeing the 55, seeing the signs for Santa Ana Boulevard. Next thing they know, they're at Chavez Ravine. And then they later recall, now people, it's crazy it sounds, but people do have abductions during the day. And they had a game time experience. When they're passing Chavez Ravine and they pulled over and they knew LA, they go, how did we get here? So they literally were transported from there to there.
So wait, was I being abducted and I didn't know it?
Maybe.
Holy shit.
I have a list of 65 traits of how do you know if you're an abductee, and maybe before this gets posted, I'll give you guys a link to it so people can look it up. And if you answer yes to 40 or more, you're having an experience. If you answer yes to like 20 or less, a lot of them questions involved in it. And me and another abductee, who's also an investigator, researcher like I am, we took what we thought were all the best trait lists out there, for traits, for abductees, and said, okay, let's kind of combine them. Whose language did we like better if they mentioned the same thing? So we tried to come up with like what we thought was comprehensive, combining everybody's list in the best language possible. And it was bigger, and we kept narrowing it down. We were trying to make 50, but we kept narrowing, and we ended at 65. So 65 traits. And if you answer yes to 40 or yes, then you're likely having experiences. If it's 20 or less, a lot of the questions on there could be other paranormal and psi experiences, so which are common in conjunction with abductions, but by themselves may not mean abductee, they just mean paranormal. So you could answer yes to like 25 or less, and then I'd say, well, you're having a lot of paranormal experiences, but not necessarily abduction. But if you answered yes to like 40 or more,
Right.
then yeah. Now, when I do that list,
shifting timelines.
now one of the questions on there is particularly a question just for guys, and one of the questions, because it's about urological things for guys, and one of the questions is gynecological for women. So, so everyone's going to instantly be down one because of that. Well, when I've taken it, I answer yes to at least like 60 or 62 things consistently. Yeah.
Yeah, I just thought I was having like a spiritual experience, or like just shifting timelines, or like, have you ever had like a preview of a timeline that hasn't unfolded yet?
Sure.
So yeah.
Well, again, it could be all sorts of psychic and
Yeah.
paranormal things, and that's why we have them on there. So by themselves doesn't mean abduction, but when you start to add them with the other things.
I love to see that list.
It's kind of this, like you say, the chicken or egg, question, which came first, the chicken or the egg, which came first, the psychic or the abductee.
Right.
A lot of abductees are psychic. Now, abductions tend to start in childhood, but psychic abilities and psi abilities can run in families. That's very common. And so a lot of abductees are also psychic, but all psychics and people with paranormal things aren't necessarily abductees.
Right. Well, I'm a conspiracy nut.
Okay. Me too.
So you talked a lot about government involvement.
Yeah.
And what do you feel the people need to understand most about this? And can you kind of go into what happened recently in the news? I believe.
Yeah. Well, we're getting what's called official disclosure from the government, and it's not like an all at once. So it's not like Trump standing up at the podium and saying, or from the Resolute desk and saying, ETs are here, y'all. And we've developed their craft, and so we're not going to that extent, but we're this close to that. We're a hair breadth away. Because what we're getting are congressional hearings about the subject, and Congress looking into it and realizing a lot of money in what's called SAP, Special Access Programs, which are the Black Project programs for the government. A lot of this is supposed to go through congressional oversight, and they're supposed to agree in closed door, very secure situations where they're given this budget, before, and they agree to these parts that cover this. But so many times they'll just overlook that, or because they're a major donor of theirs is a major aerospace company that gave $700 million for their campaign, and suddenly they go, well, I'll look the other way,
Yeah, they're like they're threatening to fire people and stuff.
Yeah.
Right?
So what you have is the approval of the money is now we have some congressional members, and thank God it's bipartisan. So, it's equally both sides of the aisle. Members it might be the only thing they're doing that's bipartisan, as a matter of fact, but it is. And at least they're doing this. And so they're looking into where's the money going? Where's the $1 trillion for these programs and stuff? Yeah. And how come we don't have approval of it? And how do we get approval? And then what's happening in these programs is there technology that should be made available, like the reverse engineering, where there's been craft that have crashed, and or some that have been shot down and retrieved, and then fed off to the major aerospace and other contracting technical companies to figure out how it works, reverse engineer it, and develop technology. And they're realizing the government looked so long the other way that they lost control of that. And it's all y'all's money that's being spent, And so they're going, oh, we need to get control over this again. So they're passing laws, the National Defense Authorization Act, which is the money that gets approved for the government spending budget every year, okay? It's thousands of pages long, but there's 65 pages in there. There's specifically new laws to protect whistleblowers, people who've been involved in these reverse engineering and programs and crash retrieval programs, to be able to come forward without going against their non-disclosure agreements or their security clearances, so they can remain in intelligence jobs and whatever, security clearances, and not lose those, to give them the protection to come forward and talk about what they know. And also demanding in this law, not so much demanding, but requiring these companies to report on the work that they're doing back to governing bodies that then have to report to Congress and the president, to have oversight to know what's going on in these programs.
Right.
Well, of course, these companies are fighting it tooth and nail,
Mm-hmm.
and those congressional members in the past, two or three in particular, that they had given hundreds of millions of dollars to for their campaigns and stuff, those people were voting this down. One of those guys, a major obstacle, is not in his position anymore. He's retired. So now they're thinking it might pass the House. It's passed the Senate, this law, and now they're hoping it'll pass the House.
When do you predict?
House meaning Congress as opposed to Senate.
When do you predict that? I guess is that called open contact then? When, like, what year do you think?
Well, on one hand, you could say it's happening. You went on my tour, people see stuff, so it's happening. People
One where the government's like, yes, guys.
Disclosure.
This is true.
The government announcing. Okay. Well, they kind of said there's reverse engineering programs, there's crash retrievals. They're having these hearings with people involved in these programs testifying. We just had a hearing 3 days ago. Now, I don't know when this is going to air, but it was in, the beginning of September. What was it then?
The drone thing, right?
The 9th? The open congressional hearing.
Yeah, was that about the drone shooting and
Yeah, okay, yeah. The footage, people have seen that on the news.
Yeah.
That was a piece of footage that the Navy had, that one of their drones had picked up that a Hellfire missile was shot. So they're filming where that was coming from, and there's this object moving along, and the Hellfire missile hits it and knocks it slightly off course, and it goes back on. But here's the weirdest part about that. And everyone could say, oh, it's a balloon from Yemen, not like a person's toy balloon, but like a governmental one, or a drone, because they were right over Yemen at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but and then this other drone is filming it, like it has the ability to pick up the motion and film what's going on. So it's there to film a Hellfire missile event going on. Okay, that's why the other drone's there. But this missile hits the back end of this thing, this round kind of glowing object, and knocks it off course and goes back on. But 3 pieces of exactly equal size come off the main thing. Now, if it had hit a balloon or a drone, and that were pieces of it, those pieces they wouldn't be equal.
Right.
They'd be jagged. You got it. And here's the other thing. They'd blow off, right? And then they would start losing velocity, slowing down and falling. If everything's moving fast, if you go forward just briefly, just like if you threw a ball, it's going to go to your net's going like this, right? Mm-hmm. So what would happen is they would actually kind of, if anything, kind of speed up and then start to they wouldn't. I take that back. Being that they're jagged pieces, probably lose velocity and start to descend.
Yeah.
These 3 things that blew off and went backwards suddenly gained back up at the original craft and flew along with it.
Wow.
Kept moving. So these were 3 separate things under intelligent control. I'm like, what the bleepity bleep does that?
Right.
Keep it clean for you. But what the hell does that? So these things seem to follow it for a period of time. Now, some people say there's other things, but what's happened is this is all happening right over the ocean, and it's bright sunlight, and they're casting shadows on the waves. So if anyone sees the darker things are the shadows on the water from these things. But these 3 things come off and are following it. And so it's very controversial right now. And everyone's talking about that, but the shame is that's not the biggest thing to happen that year. In fact, it's not a big thing at all.
What is the biggest thing that happened?
Well,
if you don't mind telling me.
Well, we'd have to go on for hours, but 3 major witnesses in the military involved in large, significant sighting events over military bases, and one of them a craft landing, were testifying to seeing and being involved in that. One of those guys became an official intelligence community whistleblower through the ICIG, the Intelligence Community Inspector General Office. So he's an official government whistleblower because then for coming out about his stuff, he was retaliated against. Mm-hmm. And now he's being blacklisted from employment, which is why they need to pass those laws. So blacklisted from employment. And so he testified to that and what he saw and what happened afterwards. And it also, That happened while in the military. After that, he got hired by a major aerospace company, and he witnessed more stuff with the aerospace company and their involvement, and was also testifying before that, but was very guarded and kept telling them during the hearing, I need to be in a SCIF, what's called a secure compartmentalized information facility, with only the members of Congress that are of a high enough security clearance level,
Right.
like those on the Select Committee on Intelligence, Select Committee on Armed Services have a high enough clearance. He said, I need to be in that environment, and that's the only place I can say that part. This part, what I witnessed on base, I can say. But that part that I did for an aerospace company, I can't. In other words, that's almost like higher security, which is mind-blowing in itself. And then two other guys, one guy's still in the Navy and witnessed a big event in the Navy. Well, in 2017, when the New York Times article came out, it showed there was some footage associated with that released by the Navy of what are called the Tic Tac sightings. He was one of the witnesses on one of the boats in that event. So he was talking to that event and what was seen. So long story short. So that was his testimony, and which is remarkable, and he's still in the Navy. Now the other guy was Air Force and aerospace, and he's being retaliated against. The Navy's much more supportive, and the Navy guy's not being retaliated against, which is very tough. So Congress is trying to piece this together and figure out why and how they can stop this. And then another gentleman, I think he was in the Army at the time, and he witnessed a huge event. In fact, he witnessed multiple events, including a landing of a craft. So that's his.
But you don't hear
about
anything
that.
about that, do you?
Well, that's the news paying attention to this footage, because it's footage and it's eye candy, and you know.
Yeah.
But that, you know, but that's not the major story of the hearing, unfortunately. And then a well-known journalist, George Knapp, very famous in the field. He's an Emmy Award-winning journalist with 𝐾LAS television in Las Vegas. And he's been very well known in the field for a long time, but they had him testify because he's had whistleblowers come to him, high-level guys, who until these laws are passed aren't willing to talk to Congress until these laws are passed, because they know they'll be retaliated.
So we're
And
moving
then he
forward.
also named, real quick, a real important thing that also happened, just real quick. It come up in one of the hearing that had happened last November, another congressional hearing on the subject, that Lockheed Martin Aerospace tried to give a piece of debris to a government program then called OSAP. And OSAP program was under contract, or the contract was awarded to Robert Bigelow Aerospace in Nevada. And Lockheed Martin had either a big piece of debris or a craft, I mean UFOs, you guys, that they'd agreed, they'd done all the work they could with it, and so they were going to give this piece to Bigelow, who was willing to spend more money, of his own money, billionaire. He said, we'll give this to you, and you can spend your own money to investigate it further, but under the guise of the government program OSAP. One guy by the name of Gaffney with the CIA involved in the SAP approval process for the money and why it originally went to Lockheed. This was all agreed to by the government as part of the OSAP program. Well, this guy stepped in and blocked the transfer from happening.
Of course.
So this has been talked about in the other hearing. This time Knapp came forward and actually named, as the first time in a hearing, actually named Gaffney and told them they need to subpoena him and get him to talk about this.
Wow.
That this ship was going to go from, or a major large piece of debris was going to go from Lockheed Martin to Bigelow. And he blocked it. And why did he block it? Because that's some director from the CIA at some level to block that. And Congress is like, what? They blocked what? So they need to test. And then he mentioned a few other guys that are called gatekeepers, people overseeing some of these governmental programs. And he named them, in the hearing. He named them and said, you need to have these people come in and you need to subpoena them, so then they're required by law. So if they're a reluctant witness or, then that's how you get them, you force them. You subpoena them and then they're under oath. And they'll go to jail if they won't tell the truth. So you force them to. So, so he's saying you need to subpoena these people. So those were all the major things from the area.
Yeah.
But you guys, what that means is we're getting disclosure. You're being
Getting
told
close.
UFOs are real. Not only are they real, there's been crash retrievals, reverse engineering programs. This is what you're getting. So I've been in the field for 36 years. I never dreamt I'd see this in my lifetime.
Have you ever been like attacked and like silenced from what you do? Like,
With the sightings and stuff, no.
so nobody's ever like came after you or came to you and they're like, hey, you got to stop doing what you're doing.
The only place
Quit talking.
where that's happened a little bit.
Okay. If you don't mind telling me.
Part of my abduction research study and my own experiences with it, I've had what are called the MILAB experiences, which is MIL for military, AB for abduction. People who are extraterrestrial abductees and contactees too will sometimes get targeted by covert human agencies. And I began to research that and talk about that. So in regards to that research, I've been threatened. Yeah,
Okay.
but they don't care if you have sightings.
Okay.
Once upon a time, in fact, even over time, there's once upon a time with sightings where you might have government guys come to your door if it was a real significant thing, or what are called the MIB, Men in Black experiences kind of
What do they say when they come?
Well, I'll finish what I was saying. So once upon a time with sightings, and then over the years it became only if you had physical evidence, like a piece of a craft, a piece of debris, significant landing trace evidence, they might show up. Now, I think if you still had a piece of debris, that they're going to show up and ask for it back, after they'll take control of it. But otherwise, kind of that's stopped happening
Okay.
for people just with sightings and stuff like that.
Well, that's a plus.
But these guys who had experiences while in the military often get retaliated on, and in aerospace companies and stuff, because they're under their NDAs and security clearances, so they retaliate on that. The public witnessing something, they don't care.
Cool.
But in that other research I do, that's where I've had that happen. And you said, do they show up? I've been watched, followed, weird things on the telephone, warned. In the research out here with our underground military base that I'm part of the team of people investigating. Well, you can take one look at me because she's not a big hiker, and I've been, I do some hiking, but obviously. I have some team members that are younger and really fit, and they go out and do like 10 miles off trail and rock climb and shit. Pardon my language.
You're fine.
Podcast.
Hey, this is the Unveiled.
Yeah, podcast. They're all good. Okay, so no FCC rules. Okay, so they go out and do stuff. They've been stopped and threatened and warned out doing their stuff, getting too close to.
You lay low more. You're not as threatened.
Well, I haven't hiked 10 miles out into those areas in the middle of the wilderness where they're having that happen.
Got it.
So, but they have, but and if what's called black helicopter harassment, phone stuff, being watched, being followed, and actually even approached and warned off a couple times from doing that research, which is the covert human involvement in abduction research, because they didn't want me talking about. Now, none of that has happened to me in a long time. So if 10, 20, 30 years ago they're really caring, they're not caring so much now.
Good. Tell me a moment that has blown your mind out of all the thousands of UFO sightings that you've witnessed.
Okay, so we'll keep this under the category of sightings.
Yeah.
On my tour, we've seen what you call full structure. So like this hovering in the sky, we see all the hard edges to something. If you can make out the distinct shape, all the hard edges, seeing metal. That's seeing what's called structure of a craft, structure of a craft, structure of a ship. We've seen full structure 70 times, but there's like 70. And since I moved to Sedona 15 years ago, so this is all on my tours, and then since I moved to Sedona, I've had daytime thank you.
Sorry, I didn't want it on your head.
That's all right, 17 daytime structure craft sightings.
Wow.
On top of the ones on my tour, but okay. So there's a bunch that really tied for first place. I'll give which one's the most intense?
Yeah.
Maybe if I have time, I can give like 2 or something. Okay. I have 2 clients in my car driving home. We were out at my viewing location on the tour, and the other group were in another car, and an older couple, got in my car. We started to drive home, so we're right here in Sedona on 89A. And you're you're up mountain shadows from that signal. Right down at the corner was what used to be a Bank of America, is now, I think, Independence, natural food store, okay, or open, about to open. So we were coming from down further the highway, passing right about where the signal is, and coming from what would be over here, same direction out the window here, like northeast, was this big amber light coming towards us. And you probably remember from the tour, we see that. And by the way, that means you're seeing plasma or ionized air around a craft, like the field effect byproduct of its propulsion system. And so we see it coming towards us, and they go, Melinda, it's coming towards us. And I said, it could be a plane headlight washing out the strobe. Because planes blink, they have a strobe. And I go, could be that. And all of a sudden, it gets bigger, closer, closer. And they go, Melinda, it's really big, and it's not blinking. It's like quarter size. And so finally I go, oh my God, I'm just approaching this signal. So right in the next driveway, so it's interesting, just down at this corner, we pull in.
On this street?
Yeah, just down at 89. So we pull in the parking lot, and I just enough to like clear the highway so I'm not gonna get rear-ended. So we're kind of in the driveway. And I pull and go, that's one of the things we put the brake on your car so fast that, it goes like this, And my clients jump out of the car, and what we were looking, because they'd already rolled down their window, and they go, oh my God, it's right above us, it's right above us. We pulled to the car, jumped down, we had a big black triangle right over us.
Holy
glowing amber. And this, out of all the sightings of my tour, this ranks as the closest one. We've had some other things almost as close, but this was the closest. We thought we were looking at it, and the guy had been an engineer, this older guy. So him and I were
You already know then.
Yeah, so, and I want to say at arm's length, so put your hands up in the sky, it's about 14 inches in diameter, so do that, like a 14-inch TV. So if you took a 14-inch TV and cut off two corners, hold it like this, and now hold it up in the sky, so everyone can do that watching this. That's how big it looked. We figured it was about, and him and I both figured it's probably about 300 feet in diameter and maybe 400 feet above us. By then, the amber light had dissipated, so it was just a big black triangle hovering right there. You could tell it had thickness to it, like as if it was like, a 1 or 2 story building, okay, but it's a big triangle. The front end, like the leading edge, like my hands are doing right near everyone, so if you think like that's a square edge, like a corner, was glowing red. And the back 1/3 of it was glowing what's called amber light, or kind of an orangey red, like I don't use the cushions on there, but almost like that, so the back end is going like that. And we, back then on the tour, had used lasers and had flashed at stuff and got it to flash back.
Yeah, I remember
that happened on that tour that night. Now we're seeing so many military helicopters out where we go that I'm cautious because it's very illegal to laser planes or helicopters.
Yeah.
I could go into that, but so this is there. And all of a sudden, so she goes, oh, I wish I had a laser. She goes to open my car door and says, where do you keep your lasers? And her husband grabs her and says, no, honey, we don't want to take our eyes off it. We don't want to miss if it does anything. And so she puts her hands up. Remember we talked about the consciousness in that?
Yeah.
She puts her hands up to her mouth like this and yells and goes, because we'd flashed at things that night and got it to flash back. So she yells and she goes, flash, flash, flash. The whole bottom, that red light in the front, spread the entire bottom of the craft, lit up bright red, like a tail light on a car, lit up red, and no joke, she just yelled. I mean, I guarantee you couldn't hear her from there. 100 feet away, you wouldn't have heard her. Right. She goes, flash, flash, flash. The bottom lights up red, and it goes flash, 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 bright red.
God.
So that's what I mean by that consciousness interaction. And it flashed 3 times. And then she's so cute. She goes, her voice quakes, and she goes, did I make it? Did you do that? And her husband, he actually goes, oh, honey, you're so powerful. Look how powerful you are. And she's like, she's like freaking out. And he's kidding with her, giving her a bad time, but she's freaking out. And I felt like going, sir, stop, my son's going to hit him. Like, stop, I'm scared of you. But she goes, and then it went black again. Complete black, all the lighting went off, and then it slowly flew away to us due west, following 89A, and gets smaller and smaller, and when it's about an inch in size, an arm's length, about that far away, it then all of a sudden shoots straight up like a bullet.
That's incredible.
Yeah, so that was, because the interactive thing, her calling, and it was the closest one,
So I am a very open-minded Christian.
Okay.
Extremely.
Yeah.
How does
By the way, I consider I was brought up very Catholic.
Okay, cool.
I still consider myself a Christian. I tell people I never lost or left my faith. I just added to it.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah.
you just answered.
Like it's a plate.
You answered
know,
my
and I
question.
added to it.
I was,
But my core faith and my belief in Christ is still there.
oh, I love that.
My personal relationship is
I
still there.
love that.
Yeah.
You answered my question, because I
Okay.
was gonna say, how does open contact expand or threaten religious views? But it's actually.
Well, it definitely expands it. I don't think it should threaten it at all.
Okay.
You know, and we're not alone. Everyone can, any adult of any intelligence or even teenagers, you go, okay, there's all these continents, all these people, all these different cultures on the planet, and you have to be okay with the fact we're around planet. We have all these different cultures and interaction, right? Especially now, the age of the internet and everything interacts.
Yeah.
When it used to be separated by large bodies of water and continents, it's no longer the case. So it's easy to travel the entire world for the most part, and experience all that. So you go, okay, there's other continents against, oceans, bodies of water. Maybe there's other continents, the distances of space,
Right.
And astronomers and astrophysicists and everyone, real space experts, let's say, agree that now they know, and they've done, enough science and stuff to know this. Every single star, and when you go out with my goggles, for instance, you see 50,000 times more stars with naked eye. Every single one of them is a planetary system. Now, Earth has 10 to 13, depending on your school of thought, different belief systems. We have 10 to 13 planets. Everyone's pretty much knows, and hardcore science is 10. In fact, they reinstated Pluto as a planet, so it's 10.
Yeah.
And then there's a 12th or 13th, very likely, that are on these giant orbits that only come around the sun every 100,000 years. So this is now, again. So at the very least, you go, well, there's these, okay. And some of these they determine from light refraction and everything else that these other suns have anywhere from 2 up to about 40 some odd planets around them. And every single star is a planetary system.
Wow, that's wild.
They all have planets circling around. So you go, so everything that happened that made our sun and its planets happen, made all these other things happen in a fairly similar process, And now there's all these images coming from the James Webb Space Telescope. I recommend everybody check that out. That'll blow your mind, rethink it all. And you go, okay, maybe God's a little bit bigger
than we thought.
Yeah.
Well, I always thought it was so egotistical that.
And is there one consciousness, one God of all of it? Yeah. One love, right? And so. And like light refracts, maybe that refracts, and thus we're all part of that. We're all refractions of that, and that consciousness is unlimited. That God's unlimited.
If everything would go away tomorrow and we just stop doing all this, if there's one truth you wanted all of us humans to know about what you do and what you're bringing through here, what would that be?
Well, it's almost going to sound cliche, but I think it is, I'm not going to claim to know any ultimate truth. But if there is one to be known, it's we're all consciousness. All one feeling, and to be anything other than compassion for goodness. Everything else creates disharmony, disease, problems, We talked about how that peak emotional experience manifests things. Well, peak emotional experience, and so wait a second. Why would you want to manifest hate, anger, when you can manifest love, compassion, forgiveness? And we're all one consciousness. So there's no reason to be anything other than loving, compassion, and forgiving to absolutely everybody and everything.
Oh. I love you.
Oh, thank you, sweetheart.
Get up here.
Here,
Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome. You're very welcome.